A millionaire with that serious and distant look ended up confusing the cleaning lady kneeling down for a special guest. This little misunderstanding forever united two worlds that seemed completely different. Get ready, because this story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. She was only 23 years old, but Rebecca Silver carried in her heart the purity of someone who still believes in dreams. Her brown eyes shone as if they had never yet known the disappointments of the world. She walked quickly through the puddles on the outskirts of São Paulo, holding tightly to the university notebooks against her chest, trying to protect them under a jacket too thin for the biting cold of that morning. The rain showed no mercy, wetting her hair and seeping through her light clothes. But not even the chill could extinguish that light of determination that seemed to rise from the depths of her soul. Her hands, delicate but marked by hard work, told her story. Short nails, dry and cracked skin from detergents, no trace of nail polish or vanity. There was no room for frivolities in Rebecca's life. Between working at her mother's beauty salon, hourly cleaning jobs, and evening shifts at the Business Administration University, there was simply no time for love. It wasn't just her body untouched by romantic caresses, but also her soul. That sincere naivety that still made her believe that those who work hard can find their place in the world. On the other side of the city, in a stylish penthouse on Avenida Faria Lima, a man was waking up in a king-size bed too big for someone who sleeps alone. Gabriel Almeida, 40 years old, a brilliant entrepreneur and founder of Geotech, one of the most powerful tech companies in the country. His blue eyes, once vivid with ideas, were now heavy with wrinkles telling stories of disappointment. Next to him, a newspaper with a front-page photo. Millionaire divorce shakes tech sector. The wound was still fresh. 7 months earlier, he had discovered his wife Amanda had been cheating on him for 2 years. With whom? His partner, his best friend. Since then, something inside him had broken. Looking at himself in the mirror while shaving, Gabriel no longer recognized the face looking back. That man had become cold, calculating. Relationships had become mere contracts. Women, simple, carefully chosen distractions, devoid of emotional risk. Mr. Almeida, the car is ready. You have a meeting with the Brazilian Investment Association in an hour. His assistant Anderson informed him through the intercom. Gabriel adjusted his Italian silk tie with the precision of someone who built an empire, but who feels that throne growing emptier. A world made of algorithms, 6-figure revenues, and endless accounts, but no peace. No one knew that the man idolized by economic headlines could no longer sleep without pills, and he didn't even remember the last time he had truly laughed. Meanwhile, at the small Brilho da Esperança salon in the east outskirts, Rebecca ran back and forth with a towel in hand, trying to contain the water leaking from the broken roof. "Mom, we need to fix these tiles before winter ruins everything," she said, placing buckets here and there to catch the drops. The sharp smell of acetone mixed with the scent of warmed coffee that her mother, Mrs. Celia, offered the first clients of the day. In the apron pocket, the cheap, cracked-screen cell phone vibrated. It was Juliana, childhood friend, and now an employee at a cleaning company working for luxury hotels. "Rebecca, I have a great opportunity for you." That evening, the Hotel Unique shone under the São Paulo sky like a monument to wealth. Inside, warm lights illuminated imposing rooms, perfect tables, and floral arrangements that looked like they came out of a movie. But behind all that opulence, there was also her, Rebecca. Juliana had called her last minute. One of the cleaning team girls had quit, and they urgently needed a reliable replacement. "It's just for tonight. Cleaning during the event. They pay cash at the end of the night." Simple, direct, and vital. Rebecca looked at the calendar on the kitchen wall, full of red deadlines, overdue university fees, bills. Her heart pounded. She couldn't afford to say no. "What time should I be there?" "At 7, service entrance." But Rebecca, the coordinator, was clear. You have to be invisible. Millionaires shouldn't even notice you exist. Invisible. That word stuck in her head, because deep down that's how the world saw her. A girl from the outskirts. No important last names, no connections, with only one inheritance, the honest values her father left her before dying in a robbery when she was only 12. "I'll be there," she said decisively, ending the call and staring for a moment at the faded photo of her father, the only one she always carried in her wallet. He had taught her that dignity has no price. On the other side of the city, Gabriel Almeida was getting dressed. Italian tie, Swiss watch, the air of someone who owns everything but inside, a void he no longer knew how to fill. That night, he would be the star of a prestigious event, the annual party of the Brazilian Investment Association. Another commitment, another facade. Rebecca arrived at 6:45 p.m. Simple jeans, sneakers, a basic shirt. She carried an old backpack. Inside was her invisible costume, a beige uniform designed to blend with the walls and never be noticed. As soon as she passed the service door, the cold air from the air conditioner hit her full in the face, a brutal contrast with the heat outside. The guard didn't even ask her name. He found it on the list and nodded toward the locker rooms. "Late," said Marcia, the coordinator, a woman with a hard face and sharp eyes. "I arrived 15 minutes early. Here, on time is already late. Go change." In the locker room, Rebecca changed quickly. Around her, other women like her, silent, fast, invisible. No one looked each other in the eyes, as if, by being transparent so often, they had forgotten they truly existed. Marcia gathered everyone for final instructions. Tonight is not just any night, it's the most important event of the year. The richest and most influential men in the country will be here. You know the rules. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't stare at guests. No mistakes. If something falls, clean it immediately. Silent, precise, invisible. Got it? Rebecca nodded silently. They assigned her to the main hall. She received a cart with everything she needed. Soft cloths, odorless products, silent sprays. Every detail was designed for those who have to be there without existing. When she entered the hall, still empty, she was breathless for a moment. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids everywhere, dream tables. The marble floor reflected like a mirror, and, beyond the windows, São Paulo slowly lit up under the night. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said a young waiter, looking a bit inexperienced. "Very much," Rebecca whispered. "They say this party costs more than 1,000,000 reais. One night, 1,000,000. Can you believe it?" Rebecca just shook her head. 1,000,000. With that amount, she could pay for her entire university, help her mother buy their own salon, maybe even get a small apartment. Instead, for some there inside, it was just an amount spent in one night, without even noticing. The first guests began to arrive. Rebecca took her position by a column, as taught. Silent, attentive, ready to act at the first spilled glass. Elegant clothes, shining jewelry, polite laughter, champagne glasses worth an entire day's work at the salon. And she there, in the same space, breathing the same air, but separated by an invisible abyss. The evening went on, and the hall was now full. The orchestra played softly, conversations flowed lightly. Mergers, investments, markets. Rebecca moved like a shadow. She had already picked up some fallen napkins, clean traces of fingers. No one noticed her. No one really saw her. Then, a young waiter, with a tense face and uncertain hand, stepped forward with a tray full of glasses. Maybe it was his first big event. He tried to make his way through the guests when suddenly a businessman, caught up in the excitement of the story he was telling, turned sharply and hit the waiter's arm. And that was when everything began. Time seemed to slow down for Rebecca. The tray's trajectory was clear. It was about to fall. The young waiter tried to save it with an instinctive, almost desperate movement, but it was too late. 6 fine crystal glasses tipped and then shattered against the white marble floor, spreading golden champagne and sharp fragments everywhere. A heavy silence enveloped the corner of the hall. All eyes fell on the paralyzed young man, his face suddenly pale, like the marble beneath his feet. He knew he had made a mistake that could cost him dearly, but Rebecca didn't hesitate for even a second. She moved quickly and confidently, as if part of a well-oiled machine. Within moments, she was already kneeling next to the disaster, gloves on her hands, a small dustpan in one, absorbent cloths in the other. Her movements were precise, silent, efficient. She first gathered the larger glass pieces, then the tiny ones, without pausing even for a second, drying the spilled liquid with expert motions. Her eyes met those of the young waiter for a moment. She gave him a small smile, barely noticeable, almost invisible, but full of solidarity. "Everything will be fine," she whispered without a voice, just with her lips. She didn't realize that, kneeling as she was, she had come exactly into the line of sight of a group that had just entered the room. She worked with her head down, determined, unaware that this scene was capturing the attention of someone who would change the course of her life. Among the newcomers was Gabriel Almeida, 38 years old, founder and CEO of GC, one of the largest tech companies in Brazil. Tall, broad-shouldered, with slightly graying hair at the temples and a sharp gaze that seemed to dissect the world around him. He was famous not only for his wealth, but also for the coldness with which he managed business and people. In recent months, however, his private life had become a tabloid soap opera, a turbulent divorce, betrayals, scandals, the battle for custody of his 7-year-old son. Since then, Gabriel had become even more closed off, cautious, cynical, but now, right there in front of him, there was something that clashed with all that cynicism. A girl in a beige uniform, kneeling, cleaning the floor with the dignity of someone not ashamed of the work she does. There was something in her posture, the way she moved, that struck him. "Who is that?" he asked Marcelo Teixeira, president of the Brazilian Investors Association and host of the evening. Marcelo followed his gaze, then smiled vaguely, almost mischievously. "Ah, Gabriel, always so attentive to details. Have you noticed our after-dinner surprise?" "Surprise?" Gabriel asked, intrigued. "Some of our members enjoy discreet company after official events. I think she's one of the after-party girls. You know how it is, disguised as staff so they don't stand out." Gabriel looked back at Rebecca, who was now finishing cleaning the last fragments. She didn't seem at all aware of the attention she was receiving. In his world of contracts and betrayals, Marcelo's theory seemed plausible. Maybe she really was one of those, a clever cover for a pleasure reserved for a few. "Interesting camouflage strategy," he commented distantly. "The best of those no one suspects," Marcelo replied with a sly smile. "But come now. I want to introduce you to a couple of foreign investors." Gabriel didn't move immediately, though. Something was off. He kept staring at her, trying to understand what had struck him so much. Meanwhile, Rebecca stood up. She felt observed and instinctively looked up. For a moment their eyes met. It was a brief moment, but full of something hard to explain. His gaze was deep, almost inquisitive. Hers was direct, without fear or malice. No seduction, just truth, just a woman working. Gabriel felt uneasy. The women he frequented, ambitious, calculating, all with secret agendas, never looked at him like that. He hadn't seen that kind of look in years, maybe ever. "So, are you coming or not?" Marcelo huffed, impatient. "Yes, sure," Gabriel answered, finally looking away. For the rest of the evening he did what was expected of him. Talks with other CEOs, toasts with French champagne, jokes about upcoming acquisitions. But in his mind, that image kept resurfacing. That look, that girl. Later, during a break, Gabriel went to the buffet for another glass, and he saw her again. Rebecca was in a quiet corner, carefully checking the contents of her cart. She seemed immersed in her world. Without thinking much, Gabriel approached. Rebecca noticed him and her heart skipped a beat. She recognized him immediately. He was the face on the covers of the business magazines she read in the library while dreaming of a better future. Gabriel Almeida, the billionaire. What could he want from her? "Good evening," he said with a barely there smile. "Good evening, sir," Rebecca replied politely but without servility. "Can I help you with something?" she added, keeping calm. Gabriel looked at her closely. Now he could see details he had missed before. Clear skin without makeup, hands marked by work, big, sincere eyes. And he realized that maybe he had been wrong. Maybe she wasn't at all who he thought. And that misunderstanding was just the beginning. Rebecca's hands, although cared for, told small stories in the thin calluses on her fingertips. Her nails were short, without polish, speaking of practicality. No rings, only a simple, functional watch. Even her shoes, though clean and well kept, betrayed daily use. Certainly she wasn't the type of woman who was there to seduce rich men. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone slightly softer. "Rebecca Silva, sir," she answered, maintaining professional composure, even though her heart pounded in her chest. What could one of Brazil's richest men want from a simple cleaning lady? "Have you worked here long?" he continued. "No, sir. I'm temporary, just for this event." Gabriel nodded thoughtfully. Something about Marcelo's explanation didn't add up. "Do you like this kind of work?" For a moment, Rebecca hesitated. No one, at all the events she had worked, had ever asked her a question like that. "It's honest work, sir. It helps me pay the bills." She paused briefly, torn between telling the truth or not. "And it helps me pay for college." "College?" Gabriel's eyebrows rose, surprised. "Yes, I'm studying business administration. I'm in my first semester." Gabriel was about to ask her another question, but at that moment Marcia, the cleaning supervisor, rushed over. "Rebecca, we need you in the ladies' room immediately. There's been a problem," she said with a stern look directed at the young woman. Then she turned to Gabriel with a forced smile. "Excuse me if she bothered you in any way, Mr. Almeida." "She didn't bother me at all," he replied curtly. "We were just talking." "In any case, she has work to do," Marcia insisted, giving Rebecca a small nod to move away. "Excuse me, sir," the young woman said, bowing her head slightly before disappearing into the crowd. Gabriel followed her with his gaze, now completely intrigued. A simple, temporary worker, yet with a sharp mind, clear eyes, and a dignified demeanor, even performing a task that many would disdain. Nothing about her matched Marcelo's insinuations, and it was at that moment that something ignited within him, a genuine curiosity, an interest that went far beyond physical attraction or the desire for conquest. It was something he hadn't felt in years, the sincere need to get to know someone for who they truly were. The evening continued in the elegant Hotel Unique. Dinner had been served, and guests were taking their places at their tables. Gabriel Almeida sat at the main table, among the directors of the Brazilian Investment Association, but his mind was elsewhere. While they discussed markets and promising new startups, his eyes wandered around the room, searching for Rebecca. He finally found her, kneeling beside one of the decorative columns, carefully cleaning a tiny, almost invisible stain. He observed the concentration in her movements, the delicacy with which she did her work, her ability to remain invisible despite doing something essential. "Interested in the cleaning girl?" Marcelo whispered beside him with a sly grin. "I can assure you she'll be available after the event." Gabriel felt a pang of annoyance. "That's not what you think." "No? You haven't stopped looking at her all evening." "She told me she's studying administration." Marcelo laughed, sipping his expensive wine. "Of course, everyone tells touching stories, broken dreams, families to support. It's all part of the game. That way, tips become more generous. Or maybe they find someone to support them." His friend's words left him uneasy. What if Marcelo was right? What if that sincerity in her eyes was nothing more than a well-rehearsed act? In a world where almost everyone pretended, where relationships were based on convenience and ulterior motives, it certainly wouldn't be the first time someone tried to deceive him. Hadn't his ex-wife done the same? Promises of eternal love while cheating on him with his business partner. Gabriel finished dinner in silence, battling within himself between the cynicism fueled by years of disappointments and a quieter, deeper voice, a feeling he couldn't ignore. That girl in the beige uniform perhaps really was different. and without even realizing it, Rebecca had already left a mark on the tired, armored heart of the billionaire. When dinner ended and the live band began to play, Gabriel seized his chance. In a dimly lit corner of the lounge, Rebecca was discreetly tidying some products in her cleaning cart. She was alone, focused, as if she wanted to become invisible. He approached with a determined stride, driven by an urgency he couldn't even explain. "We meet again," he said with a half-smile. Rebecca flinched slightly, then quickly composed herself. "Mr. Almeida," she replied respectfully, but coldly. "Do you need something?" Gabriel scrutinized her carefully. Up close, he noticed the absence of makeup, apart from a slight touch of lipstick. Her honey-colored eyes were clear, sincere. Nothing about her screamed pretense or double-dealing. "Actually, yes," he said, lowering his voice. "We need to talk, in private." A shiver ran down her spine. What could a billionaire want from her? "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm on duty. I can't leave. I'm sure your supervisor won't mind if I ask." After all, the customer is always right, isn't he? There was something in his tone, a subtle insistence that chilled Rebecca. "What is this about exactly?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Gabriel moved closer, his words almost whispered. "You don't need to keep pretending with me, Rebecca. I know why you're really here." Her eyes widened, shocked. "Excuse me? Marcelo told me about the girls chosen for entertainment after the event. The private entertainment, let's say." It was like a bucket of ice water. The insinuation hit her full in the face, like a slap, her cheeks flushed with anger and humiliation. "Mr. Almeida," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "I am a cleaner. I work to pay for my studies, to survive. I don't know what goes on in the private lounges here, but I have nothing to do with it." Gabriel perceived the change in her eyes, the reflection of suppressed tears, the wounded dignity that stiffened her back. For a moment, he doubted Marcelo's words, but years of suspicion and cynicism aren't erased so easily. "No need to act so well," he insisted, as Rebecca knelt again to pretend to tidy the products and hide her flushed face. "I've seen many of these surprises." She looked up at him from below, and finally a tear streamed down her cheek. There was so much broken dignity in that gaze, so much authentic pain, that Gabriel suddenly felt small, mean. "Excuse me," she said, rising proudly. "I have to get back to work." And without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked away quickly, leaving him there with a growing weight on his chest. He had made a mistake, perhaps one that couldn't be undone. Rebecca walked quickly down the service corridor of the Hotel Unique, fighting to hold back tears. Her hands trembled, her heart seemed to want to burst from her chest. The humiliation burned, acidic, in her throat. Arriving in the small staff room, a corner far from the eyes of illustrious guests, she leaned against the cold wall, closing her eyes to catch her breath. "Are you all right?" The gentle voice made her turn. It was Luia, a 60-year-old woman, a teammate and silent friend. Her eyes told stories of a life spent in hard but dignified work. "I'm fine," Rebecca lied with a tired smile. "No, you're not," Luia replied calmly, handing her a glass of water. "I know that look. Someone disrespected you, didn't they?" Rebecca took the water and took a sip. "One of the guests. He thought I was here to entertain him." Luia sighed, nodding. "It happens. They just have to look at us to think we're for sale." "Yet he seemed different at first," Rebecca confessed. "He asked me about university. He seemed sincere, old tactic," Luia said sadly. "They feign interest to lower your defenses." I felt dirty, as if the mere thought of him seeing me that way contaminated me. Luia took her hands, marked by work. "Listen, child, what they think doesn't define who you are. When you serve the rich, you learn they live in another world. Don't let their distorted vision take away your value." Rebecca nodded, a lump in her throat. "But it hurts, Luia. I study, I work hard, I work honestly, and I'm only seen as an available body. The pain passes, dear. What remains is what you build with your strength." At that moment, Marcia entered the room with a stern look. "Rebecca, What are you doing here? The event is still ongoing." "She wasn't feeling well," Luia interjected. "She just came to get some water. We don't pay for breaks here. If you're not well, go home, but no pay." Rebecca swallowed the lump in her throat. She couldn't afford to lose that pay. "I'm fine. I'll get right back to work." "Perfect. And Rebecca," Marcia lowered her voice, cold, "I saw you talking to Mr. Almeida. You know it's forbidden to interact with guests unless absolutely necessary." "He was the one who spoke to me," Rebecca defended herself. "It doesn't matter. Our job is to be invisible. Remember that." When Marcia left the staff room, Rebecca stared at her reflection in the chipped mirror on the wall. Invisible. That's how the world saw her, and that's how Gabriel Almeida had truly seen her. Even when feigning interest, he seemed to listen. Not as a person, with dreams, struggles, and dignity, but as a thing, a service, an option. She adjusted her apron, tied her hair with a frayed elastic, and inhaled slowly. The beige uniform, almost identical to the dull color of the walls, now seemed a symbol of everything she had always fought against: invisibility, judgment, contempt. "I'll finish this shift with my head held high," she whispered to herself, "and I'll never set foot in an event like this again." Luia, with her tired but sweet eyes, squeezed her hand. "Come on, my girl. People like us survive because we have no other choice." Rebecca returned to the hall, careful to avoid any area where she might cross Gabriel Almeida's gaze. Every minute that passed, she mentally counted how much she would earn that night. Every penny was a step towards paying off her overdue university installments, her dream, her future, a promise made to her father so many years before, when her world first fell apart, and no rich, arrogant man would tear that out of her. She was silently cleaning a side table when she felt a gaze upon her. She felt it even before she saw it. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Gabriel in the distance, his gaze fixed on her, but his face was unreadable. She sharply turned her head away. She would ignore him until the end. At 2 a.m, the reception ended. Guests began to flow out. Some stumbled, others continued to talk about million-dollar deals, as if the night would never end. But for the cleaning team, the real marathon had just begun. "No one leaves until every corner shines," Marcia announced, distributing tasks. "No fingerprints, no forgotten glasses. The lounge must look like it was never used." Gabriel Almeida was among the last to leave, but instead of heading for the elevators like everyone else, he moved to a quiet corner of the lobby. He pulled out his smartphone, unlocked the screen, and began typing with a concentrated expression. No one knew that, as one of the main investors in the hotel chain, he had direct access to the security system. For months after his ex-wife's betrayal, he had gotten into the habit of checking everything. Trusting had become a luxury he no longer afforded himself. Scrolling through the recordings, he found Rebecca. He watched her work for hours, without breaks, with precision and decorum. He watched her enter the staff room after their confrontation. Her face was distraught. Minutes later she emerged, wiped away a tear, and returned to work as if nothing had happened. That gesture, simple and silent, hit him like a punch to the gut. There was no pretense, no double-dealing, just a girl, wounded by a cruel accusation, who nevertheless refused to be defeated. Gabriel swallowed. He felt cowardly. He had hurt an honest person because of a prejudice. Marcelo approached, interrupting him. "Gabriel, coming to the after-party? I've prepared some surprises." Gabriel looked at him. What once seemed exclusive now sounded sordid. "No, Marcelo. I have an early meeting." He cut him off, putting his phone back in his pocket. "Everything okay? You seem troubled." "I'm perfectly fine," he replied. "Just tired. It's been a long night." He left the hotel with a heavy heart. The image of Rebecca's wounded eyes followed him everywhere. How could he have fallen so low? The next morning, in his penthouse overlooking Avenida Paulista, Gabriel woke up earlier than usual. The coffee was hot, the laptop on, but he couldn't concentrate on anything. He picked up the phone. "Anderson," he said to his assistant, "find someone for me. Her name is Rebecca Silva. She worked last night as a cleaner at the Hotel Unique. I want everything. Address, phone, studies, family, everything. May I ask why, sir? I don't pay you to ask questions, Anderson. I pay you to get results. 3 hours later, Gabriel held a dossier. Rebecca Silva, only daughter of Celia, owner of a small salon in the east side of São Paulo. Father died during a robbery when she was just 12 years old. First semester business administration student with overdue university fees. Odd jobs as a manicurist and cleaner to help her mother. That simple life, yet full of courage, opened his eyes. Rebecca was not like the people who surrounded him every day. She fought, with honesty, with dignity, that same dignity he had trampled on. That same evening, Gabriel did something he had never done before. He cancelled every appointment, put aside his elegant suit, put on jeans and a light shirt, and got into his Porsche. He drove to the outskirts, parked a few blocks from the Brilho da Esperança, Shine of Hope, salon. From a distance he watched. The place was simple, but tidy, lively. Rebecca was inside, concentrated, doing a client's nails with the same precision she had shown cleaning glasses at the reception. Gabriel felt an emotion difficult to explain, a mixture of shame and admiration for that strong girl who faced life with a determination he, despite having everything, had never known. And it was at that moment that he made a decision that would change everything, not out of pity, not out of charity, but out of respect. And perhaps, though he would never admit it aloud, for something that had slept in his heart for too long. The next morning, Rebecca was helping her mother open the salon, the weight of the night still on her shoulders, but with a stubborn smile on her lips. Because sometimes resisting is already a form of victory. The experience with Gabriel Almeida had left a deep scar, humiliating, bitter, but Rebecca preferred not to say anything to her mother. Dona Celia already carried heavier worries on her shoulders. Daughter, with the money you received yesterday, were you able to cover how much of the university fees? She asked, as she arranged the nail polishes by shade, seeking order amidst the chaos. One of the 2 overdue installments, Rebecca replied, trying to make her voice sound more optimistic than she felt. I'm just a little short for the second. We'll make it. Dona Celia paused, almost guilty for what she was about to say. Honey, have you thought about suspending your studies for a semester, just until we get back on our feet a bit? The lump immediately rose in her throat. Suspending her studies, it was like freezing her dream, and those who suspended them often never returned. No, Mom, 2 weeks. That's all it takes to pay the other installment. Something will happen. It has to happen. At that moment, the small bell on the door jingled, announcing the first client of the day. Rebecca turned with her best professional smile, ready, practiced, but the smile shattered in a second when she saw who walked through the threshold. Gabriel Almeida, dressed more simply than the night before, but with that unmistakable aura of someone accustomed to luxury. In that small salon, among nail polishes, stretched towels, and the scent of moisturizing cream, he seemed like a character from another world. Rebecca stiffened, her face flushed, anger, shame, surprise, perhaps all 3. Dona Celia, noticing her daughter's sudden tension, stepped forward with her usual grace. Good morning, sir. How can we help you? Gabriel didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on Rebecca, and she didn't look away. There was defiance, there was hurt, but there was also firmness. Good morning, he finally said, addressing Celia, but never truly taking his eyes off Rebecca. I've come to speak with your daughter. A private matter. Celia shot an inquiring look at her daughter, puzzled and slightly concerned. He's one of the guests from the event where I worked last night, Rebecca explained, her voice controlled. Oh, I see, Celia said, still a little confused. You can use the small room in the back. I'll welcome Mrs. Need in the meantime. Rebecca hesitated. He was the last person she wanted to be alone with, after what he'd insinuated. But something in Gabriel's gaze was different. The superiority from the night before was gone. Nor was there that annoying expression of a man accustomed to evaluating everyone and everything. There was Was it possible? A hint of remorse. "Please, Rebecca," he said, lowering his voice. "Just 5 minutes. I'm asking you." Against every instinct, she nodded. She led him into the small back room, which served as an office, storage, and break room. It was a simple, intimate space, with a desk, a few chairs, and a shelf loaded with products. On the walls, her mother's diplomas as an esthetician and manicurist, and a single framed photo, her as a child, on the lap of a kind, smiling man, her father. Gabriel entered and for the first time felt out of place. His expensive cologne seemed to clash with the familiar scent of hand cream and acetone. That small world spoke of truth, of hard work, of love. "Tell me what you came to say, Mr. Almeida," Rebecca said direct, crossing her arms over her chest. Gabriel inhaled deeply. He wasn't used to this kind of moment, to saying sorry, to admitting he was wrong. His wealth, his position, had always protected him from consequences. But Rebecca, with her dignity, with that clear gaze that had challenged him the night before, she had made every shield crumble. "I came to apologize," he finally said. His voice was lower, truer, "for what I said, for what I insinuated. It was unforgivable." She didn't answer immediately. She looked at him warily, still on the defensive. "How did you find me?" she asked coldly. I have resources," he replied, then realized how wrong that sounded. "I mean, I asked my assistant to find you. I know it might seem like an invasion, and maybe it is, but I had to find you. I had to look you in the eye and tell you that I'm sorry, truly." Something in the tone of his voice, in the fragility rarely afforded to men like him, made Rebecca's armor waver slightly. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do it? Why did you think that about me?" Gabriel lowered his gaze for the first time, and his silence, for a long moment, said much more than words. Marcelo, the event organizer, had made an unfortunate joke, one of those whispered ones that weigh like a punch. He insinuated that some women present after the official part of the evening would entertain certain guests. When he saw Rebecca kneeling, picking up something, Marcelo hinted with a poisonous smile, "Maybe she's here for that too." Gabriel at that moment said nothing, but inside something cracked, and Rebecca understood immediately. "And you believed that insinuation without even asking me," Rebecca concluded, her voice broken, hurt. "Yes," Gabriel admitted, looking her in the eyes again. "And I have no excuse. My world is made of appearances, hidden interests, masks. After my ex-wife's betrayal, I became even more cynical. But none of that justifies what I did to you." The silence that followed was dense, almost heavy to breathe. From the salon, muffled sounds of Donna Celia's voice, chatting happily with a client, drifted in. Inside that small room, however, time seemed to stand still. "After you left," Gabriel continued, "I immediately realized how wrong I had been. I watched you work for hours, with a dignity that surprised me. And I saw, finally, what kind of person you really are. It made me reflect on who I have become." Rebecca listened, still cautiously, but she began to glimpse something true in those words. "And now, what do you want from me, Mr. Almeida?" "You've already apologized." Gabriel hesitated. Then he spoke softly. "I want to help you." Rebecca's gaze immediately hardened. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," he quickly said. "It's a form of reparation. I found out you're having trouble paying for university. I'd like to offer you a scholarship through my company's foundation. You could continue studying administration without the burden of tuition fees." Rebecca looked at him, genuinely surprised. "Why would you do that?" "Because you deserve it. Because I want to turn something bad into something good. And most importantly," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "because I believe you have the potential to become a great administrator someday." Inside, Rebecca was torn. That proposal was a dream. It meant freeing herself from constant financial anxiety, focusing solely on her studies. But her dignity, that same dignity he had trampled, prevented her from accepting it so unconditionally. "Thank you, Mr. Almeida, but I can't accept something like that for free. It wouldn't be fair." Gabriel seemed to expect that answer, and indeed he nodded slowly. What if it wasn't free? What if it was a job? What kind of job? She asked, still wary. An internship in the administrative department of GEC, part-time, so you could continue studying. You'd have a fair salary and the scholarship. Rebecca remained silent for a long moment. An internship at GEC, one of the country's largest technology companies. It wasn't a favor. It was a real opportunity, a stepping stone. Why me? There must be hundreds of students from the best universities who would want a spot like that. Gabriel smiled at her, a genuine smile, perhaps the first of the day. Because in you I saw something that's rare. Integrity, strength, dignity, even in the most difficult situations. And those, they don't even teach those at Harvard. She didn't answer immediately. Everything was happening too fast. Just 24 hours earlier, this man had hurt her like no one ever had. Now, he was extending a hand that could change the course of her life. I need to think about it, she finally said, and talk to my mother about it. Of course, he replied, pulling out a business card. This is my personal number. When you've decided, call me directly. He turned to leave, but stopped at the threshold. He looked at her one last time. Rebecca, whatever your decision, know that apologizing to you was the most honest thing I've done in a long time. And he left, leaving Rebecca alone with that card in her hand and a decision capable of changing everything. A week passed since that meeting. Rebecca hadn't called. The card remained there, in the first drawer of her nightstand, a silent reminder of the choice she still had to make. Donna Celia watched her every day with growing concern. Since then, Rebecca seemed to be balancing on a knife's edge, sometimes confident, other times lost in doubt. Daughter, may I come in? Celia asked softly, knocking on the small door of the room where Rebecca studied. She looked up from her notebook filled with notes. Of course, Mom. Celia sat on the edge of the bed. The thin mattress dipped slightly under her weight, and there, between the narrow walls and dreams too big for such a small space, mother and daughter prepared to talk about choices, about the future, and about how courageous it can be to accept a new chance. The room was so small that sitting opposite each other, Celia's knees almost touched Rebecca's. A single chair, a peeling wall, and magazine clippings taped up showing women in suits, modern offices, logos of big companies. These were the simple, tenacious dreams Rebecca had cultivated since she was a little girl. You still haven't really told me what happened with that rich man at the party, Celia finally said, adjusting her crumpled apron that she hadn't even taken off after hours of work. But I see in your eyes that something is eating you up inside. Rebecca sighed. The smell of beans cooking in the pressure cooker mixed with the pungent odor of acetone that seemed to permeate her clothes, no matter how much she washed them. He humiliated me, Mom, she said in a low voice. He thought I was there, for other reasons, not just as a cleaning lady. Celia's face immediately hardened, the wrinkles on her face folding into an expression of silent anger. He disrespected you. Is that why he came here, out of remorse? Rebecca pushed a strand of hair from her tired eyes. The fan in the corner coughed and blew warm air into the room, bringing no relief. Yes, partly, but he seemed genuinely repentant, Mom. And his proposal would change everything for us. I could finish university. You wouldn't have to work late every day anymore. We wouldn't have to choose between paying for electricity or buying rice. My daughter, no money is worth your dignity, Celia said with gentle firmness, taking her hands. Hers, marked by years of toil, short, strong, with broken nails. Rebecca's younger, but already marked by the same sacrifices. It's not just about the money, Mom. Rebecca stood up and took the few steps the space allowed, stopping in front of the window. Outside, the São Paulo periphery night pulsed alive. Children still playing in the street, funk music echoing from house to house, barking dogs, fast-passing motorcycles. It's a real opportunity, Mum, to work in one of the most important companies in the country, to learn things that university alone can't teach me. Through the dirty window, The line where her only two formal shirts dried was visible, one white and one blue, bought on sale for interviews that never led anywhere. Celia approached and put an arm around her shoulders. That gesture took Rebecca back in time, to when she was 12, and after her father's death, her mother held her tight and promised they would make it, together. "What does your heart tell you, Filha?" Celia whispered. Rebecca closed her eyes for an instant, letting herself be enveloped by the scent of hair cream and freshly made food, the warm, familiar smell of her mother. When she reopened them, her gaze had changed. "My heart tells me it's worth the risk, that I can accept the opportunity without giving up my dignity, that I can set clear boundaries." Celia smiled and gently squeezed her shoulder. "Then you've already found your answer. Just promise me one thing. If you ever feel like they're trampling on you, come home. This door and this heart will always be open." "I promise, Mom," Rebecca said, hugging her tightly. A whistle from the kitchen interrupted the moment. The pressure cooker announced that the beans were ready. "Let's eat before it gets cold," Celia said. "And then you call that billionaire." That evening, after a simple dinner of rice, beans, and fried eggs, a small weekly luxury since meat was only for Sundays, Rebecca took the business card and dialed the number. Her hands trembled as she held her cracked-screen cell phone tightly, trying to ignore her heart pounding as if it wanted to leap out of her chest. On the second ring, he answered in person. "Almeida," he said professionally. "Mr. Almeida, it's Rebecca Silva." It was surreal. She, sitting on the edge of her bed in a house that sometimes ran out of water, was talking to one of the richest men in Brazil. There was a moment of silence, then his voice changed tone. "Rebecca, I was waiting for your call." There was something in the way he pronounced her name, without pity, without superiority, only with sincerity, that gave her the strength to continue. "I've thought a lot about your proposal," she said, with a calm that surprised her. "I'm willing to accept, but on 3 conditions. From the neighborhood, the sounds of the night freely entered through the window. Someone shouting lottery numbers, children still playing, despite the hour." "I'm listening," Gabriel replied, and she could almost imagine his smile. "First, I want to be treated like any other intern. No special treatment, no favors. Second, I want to be judged by my work, not by what happened between us. And third," she paused, her voice trembling slightly, "this is strictly professional. I'm accepting a study and work opportunity, nothing else." "Absolutely reasonable conditions," Gabriel replied, serious. "May I add a fourth? If you ever feel that I'm not respecting these boundaries, I want you to tell me, honestly." That sentence struck Rebecca in an unexpected way. There was vulnerability in those words, almost as if he too was moving into new, fragile territory. "I can guarantee you that, Mr. Almeida. Sincerity will never be a problem." "Perfect. And please, since we'll be working together, call me Gabriel." When she hung up, Rebecca found her mother at the doorway, with a look full of pride and concern. "So?" Celia asked. "I start Monday," Rebecca replied, and she still couldn't believe she had actually said it. A week later, Rebecca entered the majestic Geotech building for the first time, right in the heart of the prestigious Faria Lima Avenue. The leap was immense. From the modest salon on the outskirts to one of the most exclusive addresses in all of São Paulo, she wore the most elegant outfit she owned, a pair of black pants bought on sale, and that white blouse her mother had ironed 3 times in a row, trying to erase every wrinkle, as if dignity could be smoothed with a hot iron. Her shoes, even the best she owned, showed the marks of time. She had saved for days the cost of the bus just to afford an Uber that first day. She didn't want to arrive sweaty, disheveled, with anxiety written on her face. As she walked through the lobby, she felt the curious glances of elegantly dressed employees, people who looked like they stepped out of a fashion magazine. She gripped tightly the strap of her worn bag, inside which her mother had carefully wrapped a sandwich. Certainly, she couldn't afford lunch in one of the chic restaurants in the area. At the Human Resources office, they were already waiting for her. No special welcome, no mention of her knowing the company president. She was treated like any other intern. Forms to fill out, a badge to pick up, hours and regulations to memorize. She was assigned a position in the Social Projects Department, a small area, forgotten by everyone, responsible for social responsibility initiatives that were rarely realized. The head of the area, Fernanda Campos, greeted her with an expression that mixed curiosity and skepticism. "So, you're the new intern?" she said, observing her from head to toe. Fernanda was a woman in her 40s, with perfectly straight hair and manicured nails with a French polish. A distant elegance, almost unreachable for Rebecca. "Follow me, I'll show you your desk." Desk, so to speak. It was a corner with an old computer and a worn chair, visibly less modern than those used by others. "I hope the simplicity doesn't bother you," Fernanda said, staring at her as if to evaluate her. "It's perfectly fine," Rebecca replied, sincere. That computer, however old, was a luxury compared to her phone with the cracked screen, which she used for university assignments. Compared to the board propped on bricks she used as a desk at home, that space was a gift. Fernanda seemed to appreciate the answer. "Your first task will be to organize these archives," she said, pointing to some dusty boxes. "These are social project proposals accumulated over the last 5 years. Almost none of them have ever been implemented." "May I ask why?" Rebecca asked, already opening the first box amid scattered papers and crumpled notes. "Lack of genuine interest," Fernanda replied with disarming sincerity, crossing her arms over her elegant blazer. "Social responsibility for many companies is just a marketing strategy. Even here, unfortunately, it's no different." In the following days, while cataloguing the archives, Rebecca discovered real, forgotten treasures. Brilliant projects that could have changed the lives of so many people. There were training programs for youth from the periphery, initiatives to bring technology to public schools, where often there was only one computer, and often it didn't work. Environmental plans for the most neglected neighborhoods, where garbage piled up with every rain. Every project left to rot in those boxes represented a lost opportunity for people like her neighbors, like the kids she saw every morning at bus stops, with eyes full of hopes and dreams too big for their faded backpacks. An entire week passed without Rebecca seeing Gabriel. He seemed to take his promise not to treat her differently very seriously, and she was grateful for it. She wanted to prove her worth through her work, not through a recommendation. During lunch break, while others headed to expensive restaurants, Rebecca sat apart and ate the sandwich she had brought from home, trying to save money to contribute to family expenses. It was on Friday of her first week that something unexpected happened. While everyone was preparing for the weekend, Fernanda called her into her office. "I need you to present a report on these projects at the next meeting with management," she said in a neutral tone, settling into her leather armchair. Rebecca's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just an intern. Shouldn't you be handling it?" "I should, yes, but I've received specific instructions," Fernanda replied with a smile that revealed little. "Apparently the president wants a fresh perspective." The president, Gabriel. Just hearing his title made her cheeks flush. "Tell me honestly, what do you think of these projects, Rebecca?" Fernanda asked, softening her tone. Rebecca took a moment. She thought of her people, the children playing on dirt roads, the teenagers forced to leave school to help at home. "They are wonderful projects," she finally said. "With enormous potential, they could truly improve the lives of many people, and it's a shame they've been left in these boxes collecting dust." "Exactly. That's exactly what I want you to say at the meeting," Fernanda replied with a flash of genuine approval in her eyes. No filters, no fear. During the weekend, while her university classmates posted photos in bars and at parties, Rebecca was there, sitting on her bed, papers scattered everywhere, writing and rewriting that report. It wasn't just an assignment, it was a voice. Hers. Rebecca had poured her soul into her report. Her small, always cramped and chaotic room had transformed into a real office, albeit one made of scattered notes, stacks of books, and nocturnal silences. When on Sunday evening she finally put the last period on the document, Her eyes burned with fatigue, but her heart was full of something she had never felt before. Pride, a pride all her own. On Monday morning, she once again wore the only formal outfit she owned, the same one as always, and walked purposefully towards the meeting room. The GTEC corridors seemed more fragile that day, or perhaps it was she who felt stronger. As soon as she entered, she felt the weight of every gaze on her. Around the large table sat middle-aged men, expensive jackets, attentive glances. At the far end, in the central position, Gabriel. He gave her a polite, professional nod, as one would to any colleague. No favoritism, just as she had hoped. She is Rebecca Silva, our new intern in the Social Projects Department, Fernanda introduced her calmly. She has prepared an analysis on the status of our initiatives. With hands trembling slightly, Rebecca began to speak. Her voice at first was uncertain, with that marked peripheral accent she tried so hard to hide. But a few minutes were enough. When she realized that everyone was truly listening, courage replaced fear. She spoke of the forgotten projects, of the enormous unexploited potential. She recounted, without shame, that the true strength of these initiatives lay not only in numbers, but in the lives of people, of families that could be helped. And she also said firmly that for a modern company like GearTech, investing in social responsibility was not just a duty, but a winning strategy to attract talent, to build reputation, to make a difference. In summary, gentlemen, she concluded, looking Gabriel straight in the eyes for the first time, GearTech has the opportunity to transform lives and become a model for many other companies. And it can all start with a simple yes. There was a heavy silence in the room. Some executives were visibly uncomfortable. Others, however, seemed genuinely impressed. It was Gabriel who broke the silence. Thank you, Rebecca. A clear and direct analysis. His tone was professional, but in his eyes, something different shone, a discreet, sincere pride. Questions, gentlemen. The questions came, some difficult, others more curious. Rebecca answered all of them without hesitation, with honesty and clarity. She did not try to mask her origins, nor the point of view from which she spoke. She was authentic, and that was precisely what made her so powerful. At the end of the meeting, Gabriel spoke again. I believe it's time to review our approach to social projects. Fernanda, I'd like you and Rebecca to prepare an implementation plan for the 3 most promising projects. We need detailed budgets and timelines. One by one, the executives left the room. Only the 2 of them remained. You were extraordinary, he said, and finally smiled openly. Thank you for not treating me differently, she replied, almost whispering. For giving me the chance to show who I am. You didn't have to prove anything, Rebecca. I already knew who you were. I realized it the day I saw you cleaning that floor with such dignity. His tone, his gaze, the way his eyes sought hers. Something ignited within her. Something nameless, but which made her heart beat in a new way. This is just the beginning, she said, her voice firm and her face struggling not to blush. I have no doubt, he replied. That evening, on the usual crowded bus, Rebecca looked out the window. The city lights sped past beyond the dirty glass. In her eyes, a new kind of light, and in her heart, something beautiful and inexplicable was beginning to sprout. She didn't yet know what to call it, but it was there. The following months brought revolutions to her life. The internship at GearTech had changed everything, her days, her prospects, and even if she tried to deny it, her feelings too. The social projects she had brought to light began to take shape. They began to arrive in the places that truly needed them. And while this was happening, Rebecca was no longer just an intern. She was officially hired as a project assistant, with a salary that finally allowed her to move her mother into a small but comfortable apartment in a better neighborhood. The overdue bills, the fear of electricity cutoff, the hunger hidden behind smiles, had become distant memories. But there was something that continued to trouble her. Something she tried to ignore. It wasn't just the job that was changing. It was her, and perhaps it was also them. Gabriel Almeida's presence in Rebecca's thoughts had arrived on tiptoe, without raising its voice. At first, it was just a matter of admiration, the work meetings, the brilliant ideas, the clarity with which he spoke about projects. But then came the lunches, those working lunches that slowly transformed into more personal conversations. She spoke of her dreams, her struggles, the scars she carried from her childhood spent in the periphery, and Gabriel listened, truly. Once after she recounted taking her first entrance exam in borrowed shoes because hers were torn, he looked into her eyes and said, "I've never met anyone like you." Those words latched onto something inside her and didn't leave her alone for days. It wasn't just the tone of his voice, it was the way he had looked at her. Something was there, something that was no longer just professional admiration. But Rebecca fought with all her might against those thoughts. He's 40, he's your boss, he was married, he has a child, he comes from another world. She repeated it to herself like a mantra every time her mind betrayed her with daydreams. In the office, however, rumors began to circulate. Colleagues noticed the prolonged glances, the wider smiles, the pauses that seemed to hold something unspoken. "It's obvious he has a soft spot for her," one HR person whispered at the coffee machine. "Another social climber who got lucky," the other replied, unaware that Luia, the cleaning woman Rebecca had met years earlier at the Hotel Unique and whom Rebecca herself had recommended to Gaytech, was hearing everything. "And what do you two know about her?" Luia interjected, freezing them both. "Rebecca has more dignity in her little toe than the two of you put together. And if Dr. Gabriel looks at her that way, it's because he sees something in her that you, blinded by envy, will never see." Those words, like everything else, reached Rebecca's ears, and for the first time she felt exposed. If even colleagues were noticing, how could she continue to lie to herself? One Friday evening, she stayed late at the office, finishing an important report. When she closed her laptop, it was already past 9. The corridors were empty, except for a few cleaners. As she walked across the floor, she noticed a light on, Gabriel's office. She hesitated for a moment, then approached and knocked softly. "Come in," answered that deep, familiar voice. Gabriel was sitting at his desk, his tie loosened, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked tired, almost fragile. "I just came to say I'm leaving," Rebecca said, trying to keep her tone professional, even though her heart was pounding like a drum. "At this hour?" He looked at his watch, surprised. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I'll call the driver right away." "No need, I'm not letting you take a bus at this hour. It's almost night." There was a genuine concern in his voice, and she yielded. "Thank you." A strange silence followed, not heavy, but full of unspoken things. Gabriel motioned for her to sit down. "You're working too hard," he said with a half smile. Rebecca sat down. They were alone, the city lights shining outside the windows. There was an unexpected intimacy in there. "Look who's talking," she joked. "You practically live here." "True," he laughed, a rare, beautiful sound that formed small wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, precisely the ones Rebecca found terribly fascinating. "We're two workaholics. The difference is you've already built your empire. I'm still looking for the bricks." Gabriel stared at her. "You'll go far, Rebecca Silva. You have something, a strength I've never seen in anyone else." She lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "It's just determination. When you grow up with nothing, you learn to fight for everything." "It's not just that," he said, putting down his glass and moving slightly closer. "You have a light that makes me want to be a better man." Rebecca's heart exploded in her chest. Those words, they crossed every unspoken boundary. "Gabriel, I think it's better if I go," she said, standing up abruptly. He didn't stop her, but his eyes followed her to the door. The car should be downstairs already. In the silence of the elevator, Rebecca tried to breathe, but how could she calm that storm inside? For years, she had dedicated herself only to studying, to work. There had never been room for love. And now, precisely now, with her boss, a man 17 years older, with a past that didn't belong to her, she was so lost in thought that she didn't even notice the conversation with the driver, nor the journey. when she realized she was already at the door of the small apartment she shared with her mother. "We've arrived, miss," the driver said. "Thank you," she replied mechanically. Inside the house, she found Donna Celia glued to a telenovela on the small TV in the living room. "You're late, daughter." "Lots of work, Mom." But Celia observed her carefully. "Did something happen? You look strange." "Nothing," she lied, immediately closing herself in her room. But something had happened. And she knew it. For the first time, Rebecca admitted the truth, even if only to herself. She was falling in love with Gabriel Almeida. The GTEC year-end party was the most anticipated event for employees, an occasion to forget emails, targets, meetings for an evening, and let loose in one of São Paulo's most elegant hotels. Rebecca had hesitated until the last minute to attend. In recent weeks, she had kept her distance from Gabriel, limiting every exchange to purely professional matters. And he seemed to have understood, because he didn't force it, didn't push. He let her breathe. And, paradoxically, this silent respect made her admire him even more. "You have to come," Fernanda, her boss, yes, but also now a trusted friend, told her. "All the success of the social projects this year is thanks to you. You've earned it, and you deserve to celebrate." In the end, Rebecca yielded. She spent more than she could afford on a simple but elegant midnight blue dress. It was the first time she had bought something truly expensive for herself. When she entered the event hall, it felt like reliving a dream she had already seen. It was the same hotel, the Unique, where a year earlier everything had begun. Only this time, she didn't enter through the back, as an invisible part of the cleaning staff. She entered through the main door, as a guest, as a respected woman, an established professional at GTEC. "You look stunning," Fernanda whispered beside her. "And everyone's noticing, even the boss." Rebecca followed her gaze and saw him, Gabriel, across the room, in the middle of a conversation, but with his eyes fixed on her. And even at that distance, that simple gaze was like an electric shock under her skin. The evening quickly livened up. After dinner, the dance floor opened and the music began to play. Rebecca was chatting with some colleagues, trying to appear distracted, when she heard him. "Dance?" Gabriel's voice, low and warm, behind her. Her whole body reacted before she could even think. "Not very well," she admitted, turning slowly, with an embarrassed smile. "Me neither," he replied, extending his hand. "But maybe we can be terrible together." There was something disarming about that proposal, something honest, true. Rebecca couldn't say no. She gave him her hand and let herself be led onto the dance floor. The band played a slow song. Gabriel placed a hand respectfully on her back, maintaining distance. Yet she could feel his warmth, the refined scent of his aftershave, the calm rhythm of his breathing. "You look splendid tonight," he said, barely a whisper. "Thank you," she replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "It's strange to be here, in this hotel. Do you remember how we met?" "Every minute, every detail," he replied, looking at her intensely. "I'll never forget how wrong I was about you, and how that mistake was the best thing that ever happened to me." Rebecca's heart was beating too fast. "Gabriel, we shouldn't. They're watching us." It was true. Some colleagues were observing them from the dance floor. Some smiled, others judged. "Let them watch," he replied, gently squeezing her hand. "Rebecca, I've tried to ignore what I feel, to be just your boss, your mentor, but I can't do it anymore." "And what exactly do you feel?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Gabriel stopped. He stared into her eyes. "I feel that you've awakened something in me that I thought was dead, that every day next to you makes me a better man, that I can no longer imagine my life without your presence." The world seemed to spin around her. It was what she had secretly hoped to hear, but also what frightened her the most. "We can't, Gabriel. I'm your employee. You're my boss. There's a 17-year age difference between us. We come from two opposite worlds." "None of that matters," he retorted, serious. "Only what we feel matters. And if you feel even a tenth of what I feel, then it's worth fighting against everything. The music ended. The gazes grew heavier, the whispers more evident. "I have to go," she said, pulling away quickly. She crossed the room and left. She needed air, silence. In the hotel's large lobby, she stopped. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her heart. Rebecca, wait. Gabriel had followed her. His usually composed face was now etched with raw, true emotions. "Please, don't run away. I know it's a lot, all at once. I know there are 1,000 obstacles. But if there's one thing I've learned this year, it's that some battles are worth fighting." "You don't understand," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "Everything I've achieved, I've earned through hard work. If I get involved with you, everyone will say it's for personal gain, that I climbed thanks to you. And since when do you care about other people's judgment?" he asked, taking a step forward. "The Rebecca I know has never backed down for fear of what others think." She had no answer, only her heart beating too loudly. "Let me drive you home," he gently asked. "We can talk on the way. If in the end you still think we should stop, I'll respect your decision, I promise you." The silence in the car was initially thick. Then he broke it. "My marriage was over long before the betrayal," he began, looking out the window as the city lights streamed by. "Amanda and I married too young, more out of convention than love. When Pedro was born, we tried to make things work, but we were two strangers sharing a home. We pretended." Rebecca listened, touched by his sincerity. "The betrayal was just the last page of an already finished story," he continued. "After that, I closed myself off. I didn't think I would ever love again, or that I would want to trust anyone. The word love hung in the air. Until I met you," he said, turning to look at her. "That evening, your gaze, the dignity with which you faced everything, even when I humiliated you. Something in you demolished all my defenses." The car stopped in front of the modest building where Rebecca lived with her mother. It wasn't an elegant place, but it was hers, and infinitely better than the poor neighborhood where she grew up. "I'm not asking for an answer now," Gabriel said, gently taking her hand. "I just want you to know this. For years, I haven't felt anything so real. And believe me, it frightens me as much as it frightens you." Tears finally slipped down Rebecca's face. She couldn't hold them back anymore. "I feel something too, Gabriel, but I'm terribly afraid." "Afraid of what?" he asked, moving closer slowly. "Of not being enough, of disappointing you, of losing myself in a world that doesn't belong to me." He caressed her face with a gentleness that made her tremble. With his thumb, he wiped away a tear that ran freely. "Rebecca Silva, you are much more than enough. You are extraordinary, and if our worlds are different, maybe we can create a new one, just ours." There was no conscious thought, no rational decision, only an invisible force, like gravity, that pulled them towards each other. Inevitable. Their faces drew closer, and their lips met first in a light, almost shy kiss, then deeper, more urgent. When they pulled apart, breathless and with pounding hearts, Rebecca saw something in Gabriel's eyes that she had never seen: total vulnerability. A naked man, without armor, without control. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Yes, it changes everything," he murmured. And it really did change, as they had sensed. In the following days, Rebecca oscillated between pure joy and raw anxiety. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his lips again, the warmth of his hands, the gaze that seemed to penetrate her. They had promised to take it slow, to keep everything discreet at the office, at least until they understood what was truly growing between them. But it soon became evident it was impossible to hide something so powerful. "So, you and the boss, huh?" said Giselle, one of the marketing analysts, as she poured coffee in the break room. Her tone was a mix of sarcasm, curiosity, and a hint of envy. "I don't know what you're talking about," Rebecca replied, trying to sound indifferent. "Oh, come on. They saw you leave the party together, and now he comes into the office with that lovesick teenager smile, after months of looking like a cyborg. It's not hard to put two and two together." Rebecca didn't retort, but inside she tensed. That was exactly what she feared. The whispers, the glances, the murmurs, the insinuations. And it got worse that same week when Gaetech hired a new analyst for the social projects sector, Andre Mendes, 25 years old, recently graduated from USP, brilliant, enthusiastic, and as Rebecca soon discovered, he came from the same reality she knew all too well, the periphery of São Paulo. "My mother is a hairdresser," he told her one day as they ate lunch together in the cafeteria. Rebecca had just mentioned Donna Celia's salon. "I saw her work late every day just to keep me in school. That's why I studied so hard." An immediate connection, natural. Andre understood her jokes, her slang, her scars. It was like breathing familiar air after months of trying to adapt to a world that seemed alien to her. Gabriel noticed the chemistry between them. He tried not to show it, but Rebecca saw the way he looked at her every time she laughed with Andre, when they spoke animatedly during a meeting or exchanged ideas about social projects. "You two understand each other well," Gabriel observed one evening, as they dined in his luxurious apartment overlooking Ibirapuera. "He's a good colleague," she replied, trying to sound neutral. "We have similar backgrounds." Gabriel nodded, but didn't touch his food. He stirred his plate without conviction. "I guess it's nice to have someone next to you who truly knows your past." There was a subtle note in his voice. Uncertainty, perhaps even jealousy. Rebecca was surprised. Gabriel Almeida, the man who led an empire, felt threatened by a newly arrived young man. "Gabriel," she said softly, touching his hand, "Andre is just a friend, nothing more." "I know," he said, but the smile he gave her was forced. It didn't reach his eyes. "It's just that he's your age. He comes from your world. You speak the same language. Sometimes I wonder if it wouldn't be easier for you." "Enough," she interrupted him gently but firmly. "Don't do that. Don't doubt what I feel for you because of age or our origins. That's exactly what I'm afraid others will think. Don't you add to it." Gabriel squeezed her hand. "You're right. I'm sorry." But something lingered between them, a silent tension that neither of them could resolve. In the following days, the harmony between Rebecca and Andre grew. They worked well together, understood each other instantly, and stimulated each other. For Rebecca, it was just a good collaboration, a sincere friendship. But in the eyes of many at the company, it seemed like something more. Rumors began to spread like wind through the office walls. "Looks like she's already traded the boss for the new guy," someone said loud enough to be heard as Rebecca walked down the corridor. "Clever. She found someone from the same category." The words fell on her like stones, but Rebecca didn't lower her gaze. She was used to it. She had faced judgments and prejudices all her life, for being a woman, for coming from the periphery, for not having an important surname. This was just one more emblem in the collection. The real blow came on an apparently ordinary afternoon. She and Andre were in the meeting room, finalizing the last details of a crucial presentation, when Gabriel entered without warning. "Rebecca, can we talk for a moment? Alone?" His tone was cold, controlled, too controlled. She recognized that way of speaking. There was something beneath it. "Of course," she replied, nodding to Andre before following him to his office. As soon as the door closed behind them, he turned to her, tense. "I received an anonymous email this morning. They said you and Andre, that there's something between you." Rebecca felt the blood rush to her face. "And you believed it?" "No, of course not," he replied immediately. "But I'm worried about your reputation, about what they're saying about you." "My reputation," she repeated, incredulous. "Or yours?" "It's not that." "Then what is it, Gabriel? Because it sounds a lot like jealousy, like you don't trust me." He ran a hand through his grey hair, a nervous gesture she knew well. "I trust you. It's others I don't trust. I don't want them to hurt you." "Too late," she replied, crossing her arms. "I grew up with these stares, these phrases. First it was because I had no money, now it's because I'm with you. Only the reason changes." Gabriel approached her, taking her shoulders gently. "Precisely because of this. Maybe it's time to stop hiding, to tell the truth, to let everyone know we're together." Rebecca stared at him, surprised. "You want to make our relationship public?" "Yes. I want everyone to know that I love you, that this isn't a game or a whim. It's real, more real than anything else I've ever experienced. In his eyes, she saw sincerity, a clear certainty, mirroring her own. All the doubts that had tormented her for weeks dissolved. "I love you too," she finally confessed, feeling a knot loosen within her. I tried to fight against this feeling, to rationalize, but he didn't let her finish. He kissed her, an intense, deep kiss, full of unspoken days, as if they had waited for years. And it was at that precise moment that the door suddenly swung open. André. He held a folder in his hand, and on his face was the expression of someone who had seen too much. "Excuse me, I didn't know that," he stammered, lowering his gaze. "I just came to bring the data you asked for, Rebecca." The silence that followed was as heavy as lead. Gabriel slowly pulled away from her but remained close, as if to protect her. "It's all right, André," Rebecca said, trying to regain control. "Just leave them on the desk." André placed the documents, avoiding looking at them, and quickly exited, closing the door behind him. Rebecca looked at Gabriel. "Well, I guess we have no choice now. The whole company will know soon." Gabriel nodded, but there was no longer fear in his eyes, only determination. "Perhaps it's better this way. No more hiding, no more doubts. Let's face it together, Rebecca. The only way I know, head held high." And that's what they did. The next morning, Gabriel called an extraordinary meeting with the entire board. Rebecca waited outside the room, her hands cold and her heart pounding. When he called her in, he was already standing before everyone. "Gentlemen," he began in a confident voice, "I've gathered you today for a personal and professional communication." Some looked up, others already suspected. "As many of you may have heard through the usual office gossip, Rebecca and I are in a relationship." Silence. No one uttered a sound. "I want to make it clear that everything began long after her hiring and promotion, both of which were based exclusively on her extraordinary professional merit, as each of you can confirm." He paused, looking each person present in the eye. "And to avoid any possible conflict of interest, as of today, Rebecca will report directly to the executive board, no longer to me, while continuing to lead the social projects sector." Rebecca observed the reactions. Some were surprised, others remained impassive. But inside her, something was changing. It was the first time someone had defended her like this, publicly, that someone had risked their own image to protect her. "It's not a conventional situation," Gabriel admitted, "but it doesn't violate any company policy, and we expect the same respect from all of you that we have always shown for your private lives and your work." When the meeting ended, the directors left in silence. Some whispered timid compliments to the couple, others didn't even dare to meet their gaze. Fernanda was the last to leave, but she stopped for an instant beside Rebecca. "If anyone deserves to be happy, it's you two," she said with a sincere smile. "And if anyone tries to ruin your reputation, they'll have to deal with me first." Those unexpected words were like a caress for Rebecca. They gave her strength, a strength she knew she would soon need, because facing the entire company wouldn't be easy. And indeed, as expected, the news spread like wildfire in summer. Wherever she went, Rebecca felt the stares, heard the whispers. Some treated her with forced courtesy, others didn't even hide their disdain. André, in particular, avoided her, only speaking the words strictly necessary for work. Rebecca missed the simple camaraderie they had shared, but she also understood his discomfort. One afternoon, heavier than the others, after hearing venomous comments in the women's restroom, André appeared at the door of her office. "Can we talk?" he asked, standing still on the threshold. "Of course," she replied, relieved that he was finally breaking the ice. He entered and closed the door behind him. "I wanted to apologize for how I've behaved these past few weeks. I've been childish." "It's all right," Rebecca reassured him. "I know it's been a difficult situation." "It's not just about that," he confessed, sitting down in front of her. "The truth is, ever since you arrived, Rebecca, I've had feelings for you." She was surprised. "André, I had no idea." "I know." He smiled bitterly. "You never gave me any reason to hope, and now I understand why." Rebecca didn't know what to say. She had always appreciated Andre, but only as a friend. Her heart had long been elsewhere, even when she tried to deny it to herself. "I want you to know that I respect your choice," he continued, "and I hope we can go back to being friends and colleagues, because you are an extraordinary professional, Rebecca, and working with you teaches me something every day." Those sincere words were a relief. Amidst so much judgment, being recognized for her worth, beyond personal disappointment, meant a great deal. "Thank you, Andre. It really means a lot to me." When he left, Rebecca felt lighter. One less burden, one less thought. But she knew the most delicate moment was yet to come, officially meeting Gabriel's son. Pedro, 8 years old, was Gabriel's heart and soul. The situation had recently changed. After years of legal battles, his ex-wife had decided to give up joint custody. She had accepted a job offer in London, and prioritizing her career, she had left Pedro with his father permanently. The meeting was set for a Sunday, in a park. Gabriel was visibly nervous, which was rare for him. "What if he doesn't like me?" Rebecca asked as they waited for the child to arrive, accompanied by his nanny. "Pedro is a special child," Gabriel replied, squeezing her hand. "He'll adore you, I'm sure." A few minutes later, a dark-haired boy, identical to his father, ran towards them. Gabriel knelt to greet him with a hug. "Dad, I scored a goal in soccer today. It was amazing. Great champion! I want to hear all about it," Gabriel said, affectionately ruffling his hair. Then he turned to Rebecca. "Pedro, I want to introduce you to a very special person. This is Rebecca." Pedro looked at her curiously. Rebecca felt her heart beat faster under those eyes, so similar to his father's. "Hi, Pedro," she said, kneeling to be at his height. "Your dad told me you're really good at science. Is it true you built a volcano for the school fair?" The child's eyes lit up. "Yes, and it was the best volcano ever. It exploded everywhere, and the teacher even had to clean the blackboard." Rebecca laughed, truly fascinated by his enthusiasm. "That sounds amazing. You know, when I was your age, I loved doing experiments too. Once I tried to make slime at home, and I accidentally dyed my mum's hair green." Pedro burst out laughing. "Really? And was she mad?" "Very. But then she laughed too. That's how mums are." The ice was broken. That afternoon at the park, Pedro grew more and more comfortable with Rebecca. He asked her to help him make a paper airplane, which flew farther than all the others. She taught him how to play hopscotch like they did in the peripheral courtyards, and listened attentively to all his school stories. At the end of the day, when the nanny came to pick him up, Pedro suddenly hugged her. "Will you be here next Sunday too?" he asked hopefully. "If you want, of course," Rebecca replied, moved. "Promise you'll teach me how to make slime, but without dyeing anyone green." "Promise!" she laughed, meeting Gabriel's emotional gaze, who was watching the scene with teary eyes. After Pedro left, Gabriel held Rebecca tight. "Thank you," he whispered in her ear. "For what? For being exactly who you are. For winning over my son with the same naturalness with which you won me over." In the following weeks, the three began to spend more and more time together. Pedro loved going to Rebecca and Donna Celia's new apartment, captivated by stories of her childhood, by homemade sweets, by that simple and real world they represented. One evening, as they dined on the terrace of Gabriel's penthouse, Pedro naturally asked, "Why don't you live with us?" The silence that followed was charged with meaning. Gabriel and Rebecca exchanged a look. "Pedro," Gabriel began gently, "Rebecca and I are getting to know each other better. It's an important step, you know. You take it when you really care about someone. But you already care about her, Dad, and I do too," Pedro said with the clear logic of children. "And our house is too big for just the two of us." Rebecca swallowed, trying to hold back her emotion. It was true. Their relationship was transforming into something profound. They had faced together harsh glances, subtle prejudices, quietly closed doors. But they had also built something precious, a love that grew every time they overcame an obstacle. And now, perhaps, it was time to give that love a home. That evening, after Pedro fell asleep, Gabriel returned to the topic with the calm of someone who knows exactly what they feel. They sat on the veranda, sharing a glass of wine under the calm sky. "You know Pedro is right," he said, breaking the silence. "This house, it's too big for just the two of us. And although I adore your apartment and I adore Donna Celia, I think we all deserve something more." Rebecca looked at him, her heart starting to beat faster. "What exactly are you trying to tell me?" Gabriel set down his glass, took her hands in his, with a tenderness that warmed the air. "I'm telling you that I'd like us to find a new house, not mine, not yours, but ours. A place where neither of us is a guest. A refuge of our own, where we can build a family. You, I, Pedro, and Donna Celia if she wants to." Rebecca's eyes filled. That was exactly it. It wasn't about moving into his mansion, entering his life as someone who arrives later. It was about building together, on equal footing. "You always manage to surprise me, Gabriel Almeida," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "So, is it a yes?" he asked, a hopeful smile on his face. "It's a yes," she said before leaning in and kissing him with all that she felt. 3 months later, they were all settled in a spacious and welcoming house in the Alto de Pinheiros neighborhood. It wasn't as luxurious as Gabriel's penthouse, but it was much warmer and more vibrant than Rebecca's small apartment. Donna Celia had her own room, with a private bathroom and comfort, but she was always present at the table, enchanting Pedro with stories from the northeast and the aromas of her homemade sweets. At Gaiatech, Rebecca continued to shine. Her social projects department had become a model for other companies. With her calm but decisive leadership, she gained more and more respect. The gossip hadn't completely disappeared, but it had subsided when people realized that this love story wasn't a whim. It was real, strong. Then, one evening like any other, as they were having a family dinner, Gabriel got up from the table with a different look in his eyes. "I have an announcement," he said, "or rather a very important question." Pedro looked at him curiously. Donna Celia smiled as if she already knew everything. Gabriel knelt beside Rebecca's chair, pulling out a small velvet box from his pocket. "Rebecca Silva," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "You have changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You brought light where there was darkness, hope where there was resignation, love where there was only pain." Rebecca couldn't hold back her tears. "You taught me to look beyond appearances, to see the true value of people and things." He opened the box. Inside, a simple and refined ring, nothing ostentatious, but perfectly in line with who Rebecca was. "For this, in front of the two people we love most in the world, I want to ask you, Rebecca Silva, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Say yes, Rebecca!" Pedro shouted, clapping his hands enthusiastically. "Please, please!" Donna Celia laughed through her tears. Rebecca, unable to say anything, nodded and pulled Gabriel towards her for a kiss full of love. "Is it a yes?" he whispered, smiling against her lips. "It's the most convinced yes I've ever said in my life," she replied. The wedding took place 6 months later in the garden of their home. No extravagant luxury, no magazine cover event. Just an intimate, true ceremony. The people who truly mattered were there. Pedro, prouder than ever, carried the rings. Donna Celia, radiant in a turquoise dress, accompanied her daughter down the aisle of flowers. Fernanda, who had become a precious friend, was one of the bridesmaids. André was also present, now a true friend, with his new partner by his side. "I never imagined I'd be here today," Rebecca said in her vows, her voice trembling. "A girl who grew up in the periphery, who only dreamed of having enough not to feel lacking. And you, Gabriel, not only made that dream come true, you taught me to dream bigger. You made me realize that I could make a difference, that I deserved love, not despite my origins, but also because of them, with all that they gave me." Gabriel, usually composed, couldn't hold back his tears, and at that moment, amidst hugs, promises, and the complicity built day by day, not just a marriage was born, but a home, a love that didn't ask permission. It just grew, strong, sincere, and true. When they first met, he pulled her out of an abyss that had seemed like home. Distrust, loneliness, that coldness that grows inside when one gradually loses faith in love, in family, in life itself. But with him, with the way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her, Rebecca had rediscovered the warmth of being seen, chosen, cared for. And now, as they held hands in front of everyone on their wedding day, he made her a whispered promise, as profound as a sacred vow, that he would spend every day of his life trying to return that gift, that he would be the man she deserved. Always. A year later, life rewarded them with another blessing. Rebecca was pregnant. Pedro, when he found out he was going to be a big brother, jumped around the house as if he had won a cup. And Gabriel trembled. Donna Celia cried. During the ultrasound, the doctor smiled. "It's a baby girl, and she seems perfectly healthy." "A baby girl?" Gabriel whispered, squeezing Rebecca's hand as they watched that small form on the screen. "Our daughter. And what will we name her?" Rebecca asked, her voice broken with emotion. Gabriel thought for just a moment. "How about Clarice? Like Clarice Lispector, your favorite writer?" Rebecca melted into a smile, touched by the thoughtfulness. "Clarice Celia Almeida Silva. It's perfect." Clarice was born on a spring afternoon, with the warm sun filtering through the windows and the scent of flowers filling the house. She had her mother's intense eyes and her father's open smile. And Pedro immediately became the proudest brother in the universe, telling anyone who would listen that his sister was the smartest baby ever. Years passed, and on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the home's garden was filled with peace and affection. Pedro, now 11, was teaching Clarice to walk, holding her tiny hands gently. Donna Celia, in the shade of a tree, watched everything with a smile that spoke more than 1,000 words. Gabriel approached Rebecca, who was taking pictures, silently stealing the moment. "Are you happy?" he whispered, hugging her from behind. Rebecca leaned against his chest, breathing in that sense of home that only he gave her. "More than I could have ever imagined." "Do you know what I was thinking?" he asked, leaving a light kiss on her neck. "That it all started with a misunderstanding. A cleaning woman kneeling on the floor and an arrogant millionaire who mistook her for someone else." Rebecca turned to him, smiling tenderly. "Sometimes life's greatest treasures are hidden in the most unthinkable places. The secret," he completed, "is to have eyes capable of seeing beyond appearances and a heart big enough to love beyond prejudices." They kissed, in that slow, deep way that only belongs to those who have built something real. "Look!" Pedro suddenly shouted, exulting. "Clarice is walking by herself." The little girl took uncertain but determined steps, her tiny arms stretched towards Mom and Dad, a glorious smile on her round face. It was the perfect image of what they had built together, a bridge between worlds, a love that didn't follow labels, a family defined not by blood, but by respect, care, and unconditional love. And so, in that house full of laughter, scents, and memories, the story, born from a misunderstanding, continued to write itself every day. A story that didn't follow the script of perfect endings, but which, in the end, was much better than any dream. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss other videos like this one. And tell me, if you were Rebecca, would you accept the offer to work with someone who had already humiliated you? I want to know what you think in the comments, and also feel free to say where you're watching from. I love knowing how far our stories reach. We have many more exciting stories waiting for you. Just click on the recommended videos on the screen and continue this journey with us. Thank you very much for being part of this wonderful community. May God bless you and your family. See you in the next video.